Good evening, Mr. Stan and fellow classmates. My name is Scott Wu. Today, I'll be talking about the key features of the Australian system of government and comparing them with the Malaysia. The Australian Federal Constitution came into effect on 1st January 1901, establishing the Commonwealth of Australia. The Constitution became the general law for Australia. It cannot be revoked or changed, except by the people of Australia in a referendum. Australia is a federation of 6 states and 2 territories. The 6 states are New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, Victoria, South Australia, and Tasmania. And the 2 territories are Northern Territory and Australia Capital Territory. Australia has a 3 levels of government, namely federal, state, and local. In comparison, Malaysia also has a federal constitution in 1957. It is the supreme law of Malaysia, can be amended only through an amended act support by 2/3 of the member of parliament. Malaysia is also a federation of 13 states and 3 federal territories. The 13 states are Johor, Penang, Perak, Selangor, Perlis, Kelantan, Kedah, Pahang, Negeri Sembilan, Malacca, Terengganu, Sabah, Sarawak. And the 3 federal territories are Putrajaya, Kuala Lumpur, Labuan. There are 3 levels of government, namely federal, state, and local. The next key feature of the Australian system of government is the rule of law. It simply means everyone is subject to the law of the land regardless of their status as stated in Clause 5 of the Constitution. No one is above the law. Everyone is presumed innocent and entitled to a fair trial. The rule of law also applies in Malaysia through Article 4.1 of the Malaysian Constitution. It has the same principle as Australia. Australia is a constitutional monarchy. The head of state is the Queen of Australia. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, represented by the Governor-General. The monarchy is above the politics, who perform ceremonies function but does not exercise political power. These powers reside in the parliament. Malaysia is also a constitutional monarchy. The head of state is the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, His Majesty the King of Malaysia. However, it has a unique system whereby the 9 Malay state rulers take turns to assume the role of the king every 5 years. It is a largely ceremonial role, with the king bound to act upon the advice of the prime minister with few exceptions. Another key feature of the Australian system of government is representative democracy, which means Australians vote for their elected representative. It is compulsory for Australian citizens 18 years and above to vote. The federal government elections are held once in every 3 years to elect members of parliament. State senators are elected for a period of 6 years using a system of rotation that ensures that only half the state senators end their term every 3 years. Territory senators are elected for a period of 3 years. All states and territories hold their election every 4 years, except Queensland, which is held every 3 years. Lastly, all states and territories, except for an act, host their local government election every 4 years, with the exception of Western Australia and Tasmania, which have their every 2 years. The Malaysia Constitution also established Malaysia as representative democracy and has the same voting age as Australia. However, it is not mandatory to vote. The federal government elections are held every 5 years. Although Malaysia also have the Senate, or known as Dewan Negara, and House of Representatives, also known as Dewan Rakyat. Voters only elect members of House of Representatives or Parliament. State elections are also held every 5 years and usually together with federation election, but not necessary. Voters elect candidates to be the assemblyman. There are no elections for local government. They are appointed by the state government on the advice of the chief minister. Arguably, the most important key feature of the Australian system of government is the separation of powers. Under this principle, the power to govern is divided to the legislative, executive, and judiciary. Each group should work within defined area of responsibility to keep a check on the action of the others and prevent abuse of power. The legislative role is to make and amend laws. It comprises of the Queen, represented by the Governor-General, the Senate and House of Representatives. The House of Representatives has 151 members. There are 76 senators in the Senate. 12 are elected from each state and 2 from each territory. The executive plays the important role of administering the country. It comprises of the Queen, represented by the Governor General, Prime Minister, and Cabinet Minister. The judiciary has the role to interpret the law and make judgment. It comprises of judges and staff of the courts. The highest court in Australia is the High Court, followed by Federal Court, Family Court, and Circuit Court. The Malaysian system of government is also based on the same principle of separation of power, namely the legislative, executive, and judiciary. The legislative comprises of the King of Malaysia, the Senate, and the House of Representatives or Parliament. The Senate has a total of 70 senators. 2 senators are elected by each of the 13 state legislative assembly, and the balance 44 are appointed by the King. Senators are elected for a term of 3 years. The Malaysian Parliament has 222 members. The executive comprises of the King of Malaysia, Prime Minister, and Cabinet Minister. The Prime Minister must be a member of Parliament, who, in the opinion of the King, commands a majority in Parliament. The judiciary has the same role as the Australian judiciary. The highest court is the Federal Court, followed by the Court of Appeal, High Court, Session Court, and Magistrate Court. Both Australia and Malaysia also do not have a complete separation of power because the executive are also part of the legislative. As you can see, there are similarities between Australia and Malaysia system of government because they are both ex-British colonies. Their constitutions are largely based on the Westminster system, although there are differences. Modern critics have been questioning the relevance of the Australian constitution monarch, as Australia never had a royal family. When the members of the parliament are dominated by coalition, as in Malaysia, one questions the principle of separation of power, and when members of parliament start to switch parties, one questions the true meaning of representative democracy. Thank you for listening.